So please welcome Matthew Cameron-Smith, the CEO of Voyages, Indigenous Tourism Australia, Craig Hooley, Chief Operating Officer for Minor Hotels, Shay Contractor, Senior Director, Commercial Director, Australasia, and David Bowen, Head of Hotels for SKYE Suites. Please welcome up on stage.
Hello everybody. Welcome panellists. Thank you very much for joining me today. I think those statistics from Matt at STR were really interesting. Particularly, let's start out with the past. We don't want to dwell too much on the past because I think the statistics point to such opportunities in the future and a pretty strong position at the moment for it to launch from. So Matt, what are a few of the biggest lessons that you've learned over the course of the pandemic?
I think we've learned a lot of lessons and some of them quite hard. One I'd say was that federalisation was probably a good idea in 1801, but perhaps isn't the greatest model now, given we're on version 52 of border protocols just domestically. So we thought driver's licence were difficult, but aviation was certainly challenged. I think one of them is that things won't go back to normal. Normal's gone. There'll be a different way of operating as we emerge from all of this. And we have to be ready for it as an industry, from a service level, from a guest experience level, and understand the guest expectations. If you look back in history around events that happened, in fact, when Matt and I worked together last, 9/11, it's been over 20 years and we're still carrying 100 mils of liquid on an international flight. Your boots come off, your laptop comes out. That was 20 years ago, so some things will change forever.
Shay, what are the three biggest lessons you've learned?
I think I might take a little bit of the emotional stance here. Resilience. As an industry, we're probably some of the most resilient people in the world, and I've truly seen that across our GMs, our operations teams, who've just done whatever has to be done to keep the business open. I think our customers are truly ready and always willing to travel. It's our job, and it continues to be our job to make sure that we have a safe and trusted environment for them to come back to. And we're seeing that starting already, right? As soon as the doors have opened, people are starting to travel. And I think lastly for me, it's been about adaptability and flexibility. I want to be able to keep that. We learned to be adaptable and flexible through the pandemic. As we get out of it, we should not forget that lesson and continue to build on it and remain flexible for our customers.
So David, we saw a few indications about corporate travel and it taking a while to come back. From an operational perspective, what do you think corporate travel will look like moving forward over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we've already seen corporate travel come together in some aspect, and we saw, it's interesting, in between both lockdowns you see the uptick in corporate travel, so there's certainly an appetite there to travel with pent-up demand. What we're seeing, which particularly suits our product, and I'm glad that Deloitte, I think, confirmed it, that people will be travelling less frequently, but they'll be staying for longer. So we've got obviously surface apartments with large rooms and facilities and balconies that open up. I think fresh air is really important. That's certainly something that's come out of the pandemic, that customers are looking for that. So in terms of corporate travel, that's what we see as a trend going forward.
And Craig, you operate a number of different brands right across Southeast Asia.
We do.
How do you see conference and MICE business coming back?
Well, actually, really excited by it, to be honest with you. I think there's a general desire to get organisations together. I don't know if we can say it. I think we're about to do our largest MICE event, I think in years, probably a decade, in value. We've just signed a contract for an over $5 million piece of MICE business, you know, and so who's spending that money? Well, companies are. Companies want to get their teams back together. They want to reset themselves. They want to set new goals for the future. They see the new world. They see the opportunity. And what we're seeing also is a very, very different type of milestone event coming through. The return of incentive. We see a big decline in incentive over recent years. But I think organisations now are saying, well, how do we get people back into a mindset of the future, rather than going there and dumping down 5 days of, you know, finance, HR, this or the other. It's about lifestyle, it's about wellness, it's about, you know, how do we look after ourselves in order to move forward. So we're seeing a big change in the inquiry, we're seeing a big change in the interest.
So it appears to me that as the pandemic, as we move into recovery, risk is reducing as the PCR tests disappear and soon the RAT tests disappear. And with that reduction in risk, confidence is coming back. We've seen it in leisure, confidence has come back quickest. But SKYE, how do you see leisure in the future now, particularly domestically?
I think domestic leisure is here to stay for a little while longer. And I think as hoteliers, we have to capture those opportunities and get our locals to love us as much as they would travel overseas. I just went for a trip last week, which was my first one. And as a mum of 2 young kids, I would never put my kids through the paperwork, the testing to come back, all for a 5-day trip. So I think domestic leisure is here to stay for a little longer. In terms of what we are seeing, we're now starting to see that leisure period flow outside of just school holidays. So people are taking the time off to actually connect with their families, generational trips as well. So grandparents, parents, friends all getting together, and they're doing it outside of the school holidays. So it's about being ready to capture that market as it comes back.
If I can just add to that, I think experiences is what's really important in terms of leisure travel. So hotels creating those bespoke experiences for our travellers. And then just going back to what the panel previously was talking about in terms of events. So it's up to, you know, local governments and state governments to really create events that drive people to your neighbourhoods and to your hotels.
So Matt, the Rock just opened up again. It must have been tough going for a long time there for regional tourism. How are things coming back now the borders are open and isolation's now lifting? How's regional tourism doing?
Yeah, we've had a few cracks at reopening over the last 20 months. It's and that's probably one of the challenges I think our industry's faced. It's not just stopping, it's start, stop, start. That's put pressure on our team. And I love what Shay said about resilience. I think that's really important in terms of the pressure our teams have been under with that. And as a remote property, once we have to close, that puts additional pressure on the team. And when we reopen, we ask them to come back, and of course often they can't because they're in a jurisdiction they can't get back to work. So that's been even more challenging from a resource perspective. But you know, I think certainly David hit the nail on the head around experiences. It really is about offering the guest an experience, not just an overnight accommodation or a great meal. It's about all of those things. And I think Shay's also right around, it's not so much what we've missed, it's who we've missed that's driving the initial recovery. And it's that reconnection of family and reconnection of loved ones that is going to be at the forefront of our recovery in the short term as we get inbound back. And certainly what we've learned is that we can survive on domestic, but we can't recover until inbound is back.
So David, how have guest expectations changed over the pandemic? Their lives have changed. Yeah, it's been quite a shake-up. So how have the expectations changed as they come back to hotels?
Look, I think Australia's already had a very discerning traveller, but I think they've become a lot more particular and very interested and very knowledgeable about what they want and what they want to see. Cleanliness, of course, I think in all our hotels is important, so that's almost a given, but it comes back to they're looking for that bespoke experience, they're looking for that something different and how we look after them. It's interesting actually because a lot of people are probably now getting the confidence to travel and travelling for the first time, haven't travelled for a long time, and they're having those family get-togethers and reunions, so there's a lot of pressure on the hotels to create that great experience because they haven't had it for so long. And while we're trying to create that great guest experience, and we're also dealing with all the resource challenges we have, I think that, you know, it's going to be quite an interesting time in the next little while.
So Craig, talking of resource challenges, I've travelled quite a bit over the last 2 years, and a number of properties I've stayed in have cut services. Obviously they've been operating under pretty tough operating conditions, but do you think guests' expectations and their allowances of service level changes will continue? Do you think they've still got the faith and the trust, or do you think brands have been damaged?
No, I don't think brands have been damaged. I think brand has become more and more important, and it's going to become more and more important over the next, I think, 5 to 10 years. We have definitely been challenged. I think we've all been challenged with both, not just staffing, but just getting any resource. And I think where the biggest expectation has changed, particularly in leisure, is rate. You know, the rate has increased by, in some places, 50, 60% over COVID. And the expectation is, and I had a guest, a real guest complaint came to me only about a month or so ago, was we have a property at Port Stephens, Oaks Pack Blue, which is quite a big family destination. It's got a big pool and that sort of thing. And this executive CEO contacted me through LinkedIn and said, "Craig, I could have stayed in a Hilton at Sydney for a quarter of the price of staying at your hotel, but the service was not as good." So, sorry, Hilton. A bit of kudos there. Damn it, how do I do that? But anyway, but the reality of life, that's what's happening. They're coming into these resort locations, or coming into, and they're paying sometimes, in our properties, they're paying over $1,000 a night for a room. And so with that becomes an expectation of service. And then when you overlay the challenges regionally we face with resourcing, and actually getting the right amount of staff, and actually even getting linen providers to actually deliver linen on a daily basis, those sort of basic factors to run a successful hotel has put a huge amount of challenge on the business. I think there's a tolerance level there, but we've got to sort ourselves out and make sure that we can deliver, because I think that's a big difference between us being successful in the next 12 months versus the next 5 years. When I think the opportunity is that now that Australia is being discovered a bit more by force, I guess COVID was ultimately a disruptor, wasn't it? It's just a massive disruptor. It's really upset the market, and it's allowed us to pick up bits and pieces now and say, how do we redirect the market? How do we redirect our business model? And actually, by doing that, we're starting to see people want to do different experiences. And that for sure was what's attracting people to regional locations particularly. And what we need to do is make sure that the service and expectation is met, our brand is strong, so that when the international market comes in and when the market does recover, we start to see those people visiting these same locations.
You're certainly right, those regional rates have certainly gone up. It's great to see that expectations are allowing for that as well, and probably enjoying it. But you just mentioned staffing being a challenge.
Yes.
It's probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, on everyone's lips at the moment. Matt, what have you done to address the war on talent in hospitality?
So for us, our goal is always to grow our Indigenous trainees and our Indigenous employment as much as we possibly can. We're now sitting at 38% of our total workforce, which is amazing. And certainly through the National Indigenous Training Academy, we grow more and more people into our amazing industry. We help bridge the gap for young Indigenous people. However, the balance of our cohort was made up of 41 nationalities traditionally, so we've always been very reliant on visa workers and skilled migration. We've recently had some success with the Pacific Island Labour Scheme. We have a total of 153 people on their way, highly trained in hospitality, which is fantastic. So we landed our first group 2 weeks ago, second group's coming in 2 weeks' time, front of house, back of house, public area and so on. And we've had 22 chefs arrive from the Philippines through another government-supported program. So there are some great programs out there. The paperwork is not for the faint-hearted, but it is worth pursuing if you can land the right skilled labour. And it's only because, a 3.8% unemployment rate or thereabouts that the government's very proud of, and probably rightly so if you work for the government. But if you work in hospitality, that's a bit of a nightmare because it means there's less people to get, and we're all trying to chip away at the same people. So I think that challenge won't go away quickly.
I think there's been a mass exodus of people from the industry, and a lot of professional people, a lot of people with a lot of experience. David, do you think this is going to be a long-term challenge?
Yeah, look, definitely. You mentioned a lot of people have left hospitality over the pandemic, and they've gone and got jobs that they can work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, sit down in an office somewhere and take calls. So difficult to get them back. So we almost need to create a new generation of people that are interested in hospitality. And I think one of the things we're doing is aligning ourselves with the tertiary institutions that teach hospitality. We're fortunate. One of our GMs, Felicity, is a lecturer at one of the universities. So that kind of gives us an insight into some of the people there. So it's creating those next generation of leaders. We do an intern program which gives them a bit of a taste of the hotel, which hopefully then leads to full-time employment. But it's really about creating those next generation of people that really want to work in hotels and hospitality.
And Shay, what are Hilton doing to retain the best and attract the best talent from the industry?
I think for us, it's giving a reason for people to see a future career path in hospitality and a long-term career path. We've kind of destroyed that over the last 2 years completely. Our GM Academy, our SHINE program, which allows people right from the start to be put into programs that allow them to continue growing their career path. And obviously with all the growth that we've got coming in APAC, it allows them the opportunities to travel and see the rest of the world as it opens up for us as well. I think I might just add one other point, right? People want to come back to work if it's a fun place to be. And I think as hospitality, as an industry, we've always had a lot of fun. We have to bring that back for our employees to come back into a fun, more engaging workplace as well.
So Craig, is it about reinventing hospitality as a career, relaunching it? And what are people looking for these days?
No, it doesn't need to reinvent. It's an amazing industry, isn't it? That's why we're all in it, isn't it? It's true. I think it is fun, and the challenge has been traditionally is that we've relied so heavily on casual labour, and that labour has mainly been around, as we all know, students and visa holders have really driven a lot of our industry, and to that point, I think we're probably a little bit lazy, to be honest, in relying on that casual pool. And when it disappeared during COVID, we've had to go back to the grassroots of finding people that actually want to work in industry and want to work for a company. And so what we're looking at is things like trying to move away from casual employment, random shifts, more stability of workforce, more permanent placement. We're trying to do more of that, developing programs from the roots up, whereas we probably traditionally didn't really spend a lot on training in the front line of the business. It more started at supervisory level and up. We're starting now looking at going back into ground roots. We're looking at benefits programs. We're looking at a whole lot of things that actually address the workforce as a whole workforce, rather than traditionally, I'm probably guilty of this myself, where you had sort of a core group of permanents that you had in your hotel, then you had a bunch of casuals that you kind of treated differently. So I think that if there's change, that will be the change. We've got to invest in our people. And we made a conscious decision at the start of COVID not to close any of our hotels, keep them all open, keep as many of our staff employed as possible. And for that reason, that we wanted to really start that process coming out. We believed, and I think our team still believe that, is that coming out of this, we don't have the same amount of workforce issues as maybe some of our competitors do, because actually our staff have been operating and employed throughout COVID.
Retain that experience. So Matt, we hear a lot about environmental sustainability. How important do you believe cultural sustainability will be as we head towards recovery, and how important is it to new employees?
A great question, and certainly declare interest on this one because this is something very close to us. I think that our industry, if you look back 2 years, sustainability or emissions was one of the most talked about issues that tourism was facing, particularly in aviation. For us as a regional and remote asset, but also in North Queensland for Mossman Gorge, given we're on a UNESCO World Heritage Park, it's incredibly important. But if I look at, so managing our emissions and managing our environmental and our footprint around wildlife is incredibly important. But for us, we have this amazing difference or distinction in Australia with the world's oldest living culture. And as that culture ages, finding platforms to enable Indigenous enterprise is incredibly important to us, and we've done it recently through opening a new gallery of Central Australia, which is dedicated exclusively to Central Australian art, and that's really about enterprise back to community. And the more we can provide platforms or enable Indigenous communities to commercialise what it is they do, and the more we can encourage the youth to get involved through things like the Indigenous Training Academy, the more we think we can do our part at least to help sustain this amazing culture.
So finally, David, what do you see happening in the industry in the next 2 years? And is the company growth and expansion a key focus?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think the comeback has been quite strong. We've seen that comeback quite strong. So, and I think it'll continue to go that way. Again, the previous panel was quite positive about investment in hotels and what needs to happen with investment in this sector. I think we will continue to grow. We've got several projects, and we're probably a little bit different where our projects are more mixed-use developments. So we look at office space, we look at retail space, we look at hotel space as a whole, and that probably puts us in a better investment mind, but we certainly see a lot of growth in the future.
Fantastic. Craig, did you have anything to add from Miner's perspective?
Absolutely. Yeah, look, we're excited to continue to grow. For Miner, Australia is still a really key market for us, and so we're actively looking at we want to get Nanantara into Australia somewhere. We're desperate for that. We've got a couple of projects on the run at the moment which we're trying to get across the line. We want to get our European NH brand into Australia this year, and we're very close, hopefully, to getting our first full Varney resort into Australia this year. So the development team very busy, and like the first panel said, I mean, we think it's a great opportunity to acquire and grow. So we're looking forward to the next year or two. Absolutely.
Great. Finally, Shay, I see Waldorf Astoria are about to open.
We did, and I think as we enter the golden age of travel for the next couple of years, bringing luxury and focused service brands into Australasia would be a great opportunity. So we announced Waldorf Astoria Sydney yesterday, and we've got 13 hotels in the pipeline already, 6 of them being focused service brands, and we believe that is a perfect setting to get into the secondary markets around key cities as well.
Fantastic. And Matt, finally, Voyages, plans for the future?
Well, we'll cross the recovery hurdle first, I think, and then we look at possible expansion down the track. We'd certainly love to see a training academy established in more locations around Australia. We've had 617 graduates. We've got 4 former graduates that will celebrate 10 years with the business this year. So in terms of genuinely closing the gap and helping to sustain culture, we'd love to see that grow.
Fantastic. Thank you. Please join me in thanking all our panellists.
Has anybody got any questions? Hang on. Anyone got any questions for the panel? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Who's got a question? Over there. Sorry, we did not get off the thread. Okay.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you'd be willing to share, as far as your conference bookings and that, to create the safety for the businesses coming in. What is your cancellation policy in relation to COVID, and how are you dealing with that if the organisers and that are coming down with COVID?
John, what's our cancellation policy?
He'll tell you that. We're still fairly flexible at the moment.
Fairly flexible, yeah.
I had 4 people out of 50 who chose not to come. 2 had COVID, 2 didn't want to come because of the risk of COVID. And we allowed them not to come. Now and we took the hit on that because we actually held it in an external venue. But from our point of view, it's still on a case-by-case basis, and we're just reviewing in the next quarter in terms of that cancellation policy of wanting to move more and more back to normality to protect our revenues and also to get everyone feeling that the environment and the MICE business is returning.
I'll add a bit to that to say that I think flexibility is incredibly important at the moment, and you've got to work with your customers around their expectations and what it is they can and can't achieve. We're generally speaking, a fly-to asset, so part of the challenge with us is what is the airline cancellation, even before they get to what our cancellation policy is. But we've certainly tried to be flexible. It depends on the nature of the cancellation and how short-term it is. We provision predominantly from outside, so if we've bought in provisions and ready to go for a big event, then if we get hit late, then there's a genuine cost to us, but we try and be as flexible as we can.
Just one more question from Tim.
My question is, in these times, given that the market is predominantly leisure, are you finding your guests are going towards more upper mid-scale or more to the luxury end of the market, or looking for value in the economy brands?
I'm happy to take this one. I think it's a mix of both. I think there are people who never used to travel around Australia who are now putting the effort and time into planning a holiday, and they're probably going into the mid-scale brands. There is definitely a tendency to spend up when you go into the full service and the luxury. We're definitely seeing from a full service perspective, suite products selling out faster than hotel accommodation, regular rooms, people buying up in terms of extras for the rooms, and that all adds to the ADR discussion that we were having earlier as well.
Yeah, we're probably seeing it in our product too, which is probably more in that upper scale, and certainly people buying up to the more 2-bedroom product if they can. Over Easter, for example, a lot of our 2-bedroom is already sold out, so people are definitely spending up if they can.
I think the same is true for guest experience. So the accommodation is one part of it, then the outer room experience is another part. We've got 6 standards of accommodation, and it's not not unusual for someone from the caravan park to do a dinner for 2 at Tallywiru, which is $800 for 2. So it really is about value and what they're wanting to do and the experience they want to have. And Tallywiru's, I say, it's $780 for 2 people, but it's our highest rated guest experience, and it's sold out till June. So I think that shows that the domestic market's ready to get out there.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our distinguished guests. Thanks to Matt, Craig, Shay, and David, and Matthew. Thank you very much.